Here's what Lao Tzu said in verse 29. Do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. Everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. Just as you breathe in, breathe out. There is a time for being ahead, a time for being behind, a time for being in motion, a time for being at rest, a time for being vigorous, a time for being exhausted, a time for being safe, a time for being in danger. To the sage, all of life is a movement toward perfection. So what need has he for the excessive, the extravagant, or the extreme? There's a time for everything. Imagine if you knew this. If you really knew that what you were experiencing emotionally in your life was a part of what there is a time for, and that you're not really doing anything. Lao Tzu says it over and over again. You're not doing anything. You're being done. You're being done right now. You're one of the 10,000 things. And it is all being done, all of it. Like I do yoga every morning, or almost every morning, 5-6 days a week. I do this 90-minute Bikram yoga, this hot yoga. And this has helped me so much with just that simple little thing, just remembering what it says in verse 29 of the Tao. That there are times when you're in the midst of yoga, when you have a position where you have to put this foot out, and you have to turn this one down, and you have to get down here like this, and you have to take this arm, and I'm going to do it. And you have to do that for 60 seconds in a 110-degree room. That's after doing many other postures as well. There was a time when I would do that and I'd be so exhausted, and all I could think about was, when is this 60 seconds going to be up? Oh my God, when are we going to get through with this posture? When are we going to get onto where I can lie down on the floor? And finally, and I began to realize as this doing the Tao thing has really changed me dramatically, so that now when I'm in that position with one arm down and one arm up, and it is exhausting, and you're stretching, and you've got your arm right next to your ear, and you're holding on, that you say to yourself, there's a time for being exhausted, and there's a time for rest. There's a time for things not to work out. Imagine if you knew that in the midst of my working with my daughter, for example, when I see the struggle that she's going to, and I can stand back and say, there's a time for her to experience this. And there's a time for her not to experience it. I don't think there's any more all-pervasive theme in the Tao Te Ching than the idea of being a non-interferer. Do you, Stephen? I mean, isn't it? It's about not interfering, isn't it? It's about letting go. It's about allowing. It's about detaching. It's about disconnecting yourself from this belief that you are in charge of other people. I'm the father of 8 children. And the father of motivation. That's what they tell me, so I've got... And as this father of 8 children, one of the things that I've recognized, and what has made me, I think, a better parent, particularly even since I've been doing this, is my willingness to, I call it the bite your tongue verse of the Tao. Just hang back just for a second, just as you're about to interfere, just as you're about to lay it on and tell somebody else how they should be and what they should do and how they should do it, you step back and realize that what Khalil Gibran, the great Lebanese poet, in writing in the Prophet, said was just a basic truth. Your children are not your children. They are the products of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not for you. And you step back And I can't even begin to tell you how freeing it is to realize that you don't have anything to do. You don't have anyone to control. You can be at peace.
What follows is a guide for shifting your mindset to experiencing a world where real magic is not only possible, but it's your birthright. With this shift, miracle making will become something you not only believe in, but that you manifest in your everyday life. Number 1, reserve your judgment and your disbelief. I encourage you to cultivate a new, self-declared openness to anything and everything being a possibility for you. Having an open mind and suspending your disbelief allows you to experience new vistas, while your closed mind keeps you trapped in your old ways of thinking and seeing. Real magic is only available to those who can imagine any and all possibilities, while letting the how it will happen take care of itself. 2, create a real magic zone in your mind. Make this a very private part of your life. Reserve a small piece of your consciousness exclusively for this. I've been able to manifest what constitutes miracles for myself by having this very private zone all to myself. Retreat there often to ask for the loving guidance, and the guidance will be there. Number 3, affirm yourself as a no-limit person. When you develop this real magic zone in your mind and trust that you can go there at will, begin to affirm to yourself that there are literally no limits to the powers that you possess. A great rule of thumb is this: if you can conceive of it in your mind, then it can be brought into the physical world. To become your own miracle worker, you'll have to change the thoughts that create your world of limits and boundaries. Why not include the presence of real magic in your life as well? Number 4, develop a new mindset toward the concept of intuition. You really must become comfortable with the idea that strong inner pleadings and sudden hunches are truly inner voices offering you guidance. Think of your intuitive self as God talking privately to you, just as you talk privately to God and call it prayer. I'm absolutely certain that you have numerous stories of times that an inner voice prompted you to behave in what seemed to be an irrational way and turned out instead to be life-saving. It happens to everyone. Most of us get these intuitive signals on a regular basis. Your intuition, that fuzzy inner voice that you hear so often, is a part of your life. It's there. It's real. Pay attention to it. Number 5, discover the secret that sits in the center and knows. Become familiar and comfortable with the notion that nothingness has something to offer you on your path to real magic. Consider, it's the space between the notes that makes the music. A note without space is one long sound. No nothingness, no music. Consider this: a room is not a room without silent, empty space within, surrounded by the shape of material form. No nothingness, no room. And so it is with you. You too are material form surrounding the invisible, silent emptiness that is also you. Without that nothingness inside, there can be no you. It is out of that secret in the center that you will be able to create miracles for yourself. Number 6, learn to learn through knowing and trusting rather than doubting and fearing. Much of your learning has likely involved questioning your ability to gain a particular skill. You were taught to doubt in a culture that stressed, you can't, it's wrong, you don't have the right background or the right credentials or the training or the experience. Out of doubt came a fear of your greatness, a fear of disapproval, a fear of failure or intimacy, and even success. If you want to become acquainted with real magic, fear and doubt must be replaced with trust and a strong reliance on internal knowing. Keep in mind as you shift to this new consciousness that behind fear is powerlessness. That which you fear you are fighting, and fighting always weakens you. Behind trust is empowerment and love. It is your choice always, and the choice begins in that amorphous inner world of the mind. Number 7, affirm that your intention creates your reality. Memorize and continually remind yourself, my intention creates my reality. Intention is the energy of your soul coming into contact with your physical reality. What you see around you, who you associate with, how you function daily, and virtually everything about the physical you is a result of your intentions or how your thoughts became energized into action. Creating miracles in your life comes from your intention to do so. Not your wish, not your desire, not your goal, your intention. Then and only then, you'll begin to turn that same potential into your reality in the material world. Number 8, experience surrender and satori. Surrendering is the equivalent of putting inspiration into your life. When you are inspired, you feel purposeful. When you trust in the invisible intelligence of the universe, you feel guided. It can happen in a moment, and it often occurs just that quickly. In Zen, they call this process satori, which translates roughly to instant awakening. This feeling of satori is a result of an inner decision to be at harmony with yourself and your physical world. It's really a decision to surrender. Number 9, learn to act as if the life you visualize is already here. Act as if that which you perceive in your mind is already here in the physical world. You create your thoughts create your intentions create your reality. Consequently, you must begin to ignore your own doubt about the importance of your inner world and start acting as if the images you desire are already your reality. If you want to be confident but don't normally act that way, today, just this once, act in the physical world the way that you believe a confident person would. This is how miracle-minded people really act in their lives. Try it. Number 10, live according to your spiritual self first and your physical self second. In developing your mindset for real magic, you must begin the process of living primarily according to your spiritual self. Miracles will only occur if the choices you are making are in concert with your spiritual self. Your first responsibility is to your spiritual side. Consult your mind before acting, and therefore become authentic to yourself. It is nothing more than an internal shift. There is no need to rid yourself of physical habits nor pretend that your physical longings don't exist. Instead, what you do is you rearrange your priorities, making first contact with your soul, paying attention to it first, and allowing your behaviors in the physical world to flow from those new thoughts. Look within and listen, and your priorities will be clearly seen and heard by your physical self. Inspiration responds to our attentiveness in various and sometimes unexpected ways. For example, when I began writing this book, I debated between the two titles, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Destiny, or Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One day, while I was swimming in the ocean, I was going back and forth in my mind, trying out both titles. Still uncertain, when I'd finished my swim, I called Reed Tracy, who's the president and CEO of my publishing company at Hay House, from a payphone to get his opinion about the title. While I waited for him to answer, the word calling appeared on the miniature screen of the telephone. Nothing else, just calling. And then the word began to flash on and off as if it were trying to get my attention. When Reed answered, I told him what had just occurred, and we both agreed on Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, for the title of this book and this program. All of this may appear to be nothing more than a silly coincidence, but I know better. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative juices flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that, in uninspired moments, are frustrating. Our heart sings in appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to the work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves. It's a return to that invisible, formless field from which all things emanate, a field of energy that I call intention in my previous book, The Power of Intention. My experience with being in spirit. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment, but more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source, call them voices or messages or silent reminders, even invisible suggestions or what have you, but they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the world's great geniuses, once remarked, quote, "When I am, as it were, completely myself, entirely alone and of good cheer, say traveling in a carriage or walking after a good meal or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how they come, I know not, nor can I foresee them." End of quote. We don't have to be a genius to know what Mozart speaks of. The same force in a different way is flowing through you and me right now. I've learned to remove resistance to the free flow of this spiritual energy by reminding myself to align with it, or to be in spirit in my thoughts and my expectations. When I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me, and I encourage ideas to flow freely. Like Mozart, I'm connected as if it were to my source in spirit, thinking and expecting to be the instrument of my spiritual source. Ideas flow, and whatever assistance I need just shows up. And, like Mozart, I can't describe how the ideas come, and I can't force them. Staying in spirit seems to be the secret to this feeling of being inspired. I also find that inspiration flows in other areas of my life when my primary mission is like what Michael Berg so beautifully describes in Becoming Like God, Kabbalah, and Our Ultimate Destiny. Quote, "Just as every being is God's business, every being becomes our business as well." Unquote. That is, being inspired necessitates the willingness to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion.
When you feel inspired, everything works. The reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired. And Patanjali said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. There's some very important wisdom in that. This idea of finding yourself inspired means that you allow these dormant forces, these things that are in every single one of us, to come alive. Consciousness begins to expand. Things begin to show up in your life. You begin to manage the coincidences of your life.
To understand that you have a higher self and to know it and be aware of it is one thing, but to trust in it is quite something else. And the ways to put this principle into practice are, first of all, to keep in mind that you cannot go to a higher ground if you're hanging on to a lower level. That in order to get yourself to a higher place, a place of trust, you have to somehow recognize that all of the stuff that's going on in your life in a lower place is something you have to let go of. You have to trust that when you do let go, you're not going to be falling into the abyss. And I would recommend that you take a real rebellious attitude toward the philosophy which preaches that you are not connected to the divine energy, that somehow this force that has many names is something that is outside of you, and you're not deserving of it. Until you know that you can trust in it, you can't use it and acknowledge it in your life. One of the things to do to practice this trust is to take the most serious problem that you have and turn it over to God. Affirm to yourself, I would like to show my trust in the divine force by simply turning my problems over to your divine hands. I can remember doing this with some of the things that I really struggled with at one time in my life, things that I just thought I couldn't get past. I remember going through relationship difficulties. I remember going through problems with drinking and things like this, where it just seemed like I wanted to get past it and I just didn't know quite what to do. I can remember times when I would be stuck in my writing and not sure whether I could, and I would just stop and I would just say, all right, I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust. I'm going to surrender. And this concept of surrender is very, very important. So when you do this, it's just that simple act of getting down on your knees and staying there on your knees and just say, okay, I'm going to turn this over to something that is higher within myself. And the ego seems to go away, and the solution seems to be there for you. The presence of complete trust is evident in your life when you start to think and feel and do are all balanced and they're all in harmony. This is called congruence. If you're congruent, your thoughts and your feelings and your behavior are all in harmony. If you're incongruent, you have one thought about, gee, I'd like to be able to do this, but then you feel another way about it, and then you act in a completely different way. And this is the cause of most of the struggles in our life, and it's also the thing that impedes the free flow of the divine force into your life. You have to trust in yourself. When you're trusting in yourself, you're trusting in this very wisdom that is the source of your life. And when you are congruent within and are feeling congruent, you are also beginning to act congruent. So work on congruency and look at the areas in your life in which you feel yourself to be incongruent. What do I think about this, and how do I feel, and how do I act? And try to bring them into harmony. And you'll start accessing this trust that is absolutely essential to the manifesting process. And of course, as always, you have to begin a meditation practice of contemplating the supreme principle which is beyond the pettiness of this world. And as you meditate and go within and you make conscious contact with God, God isn't something that you know about any longer. God is something that you know directly and personally. And once you have this direct conscious contact, this knowing, then trust is not anything that you'll ever have to work on again. You'll have the knowing, you'll have banished the doubt. In your silent moments of prayer, I would recommend that you're not afraid to ask for help, because what you're asking for is a more direct communication and dialogue with God, which is, of course, a part of what you are already in the first place. So that God is not this giant vending machine in the sky who's dispensing goodies to you, but God is a part of you that you are in dialogue with, and you ask for that, and you'll find yourself achieving it. I'd also recommend that you practice a 2 or 3 day regimen of just having unconditionally loving thoughts and nothing else towards one particular person in your life, whoever that might be, maybe one of your children or your in-laws or one of your spouse, or maybe someone you're struggling with or having a difficult time in communicating. And just practice, say, for this day and this day only, I am going to practice everything, no matter what they say or how they say it. I'm just going to respond internally with unconditional love. I'm not going to allow any negativity there. And watch how that relationship changes. Remind yourself that love transforms, that unconditional love is healing, that it heals the body and it heals the mind. And if you have this kind of approach to your life and don't put conditions on it, then you'll find yourself feeling much more peaceful, and you'll sleep better, and you'll enjoy your friends and neighbors more, and your prosperity will increase, because unconditional love is the same as having peace within yourself. Remember, the opposite of love is really fear. Every time you experience fear, ask yourself, what's going on that I've substituted fear here for love in this moment? And the fear that we have that we're not complete, or that we're alone, which is the number one fear that all human beings seem to suffer from, is that the fear of being alone. Once you've transcended that fear of being alone, you begin to recognize you're never alone. You always have divine guidance. You're always connected to this divine principle that is universal. That means it's everywhere, which means there's no place that it's not, which means, of course, that it's within you. So you substitute that fear when you accept unconditional love into your life. It goes away.